Picture this. You're walking down the street, or maybe you're just alone in your room, and you catch yourself completely mid-sentence, talking out loud to no one. Suddenly, you freeze. You look around, hoping nobody saw you, thinking, man, am I losing my mind? Am I just lonely? Society has conditioned us to believe that talking to yourself is a red flag. We've been told it's weird, odd, or a sign of eccentricity. But modern neuroscience and psychology say the absolute opposite. This one quiet, misunderstood habit may reveal 7 rare psychological traits that most people never develop. Scientists have spent decades proving that thinking out loud isn't a glitch. It's a biological upgrade. Today, we're breaking down the 7 rare traits found in people who think out loud when no one is listening. By the end of this video, you will never see this habit the same way again. Before we unlock the science, let's get real. Be honest. Do you talk to yourself when you're completely alone? If you do it almost every single day, comment 88 right now. If you think it's completely weird and your mind is always silent, comment 99. Drop your number right below, and let's see how many out loud thinkers we have in our community today. Let's start with trait number 1, higher self-awareness. Think about the last time you caught yourself mid-sentence alone, saying something like, okay, why did I actually do that? In that exact moment, something unusual happened. You split in two. One part of you acted, and another part stepped back to watch. Psychologists call this reflective awareness, and it sits at the very heart of self-knowledge. Nearly a century ago, the Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky discovered that children talk to themselves out loud to guide their own behavior. He proved that this private speech never really disappears. It just goes underground, becoming the inner voice that narrates your entire life. From a neurochemical standpoint, when you let that voice out loud, you stimulate your auditory cortex while your prefrontal cortex processes the data. This creates a powerful biofeedback loop. People who do this tend to examine their thoughts, emotions, and decisions far more closely than those who don't. They don't just feel angry, they ask why. They don't just make a choice, they interrogate it. Self-talk becomes a kind of mental mirror, reflecting not just what you're doing, but who you're becoming. Most people move through the day on autopilot, reacting without ever reflecting. The self-talker does the opposite. Every quiet conversation is a small act of paying attention to the one person most of us understand the least ourselves. This leads us directly to trait number 2, strong problem-solving ability. There's a reason engineers mutter at whiteboards and chess players whisper through their moves. When you say a problem out loud, you force your brain to slow down and turn fuzzy, half-formed thoughts into precise words. In cognitive psychology, this is called the self-explanation effect. Neurological studies show that when you explain a complex problem to yourself out loud, you engage both the left and right hemispheres of your brain. This cross-hemispheric communication boosts the release of acetylcholine, a key neurotransmitter responsible for neuroplasticity, focus, and logical sequencing. Study after study has shown that people who explain a problem to themselves understand it more deeply and solve it more reliably than people who just stare and think. Speaking turns a tangled mess of ideas into a single line you can actually follow. It's a cognitive tool. Each sentence becomes a step, each step exposes the next gap, and suddenly, the wall you were stuck at has a door in it. Furthermore, you catch your own mistakes faster. The moment a flawed plan hits the air, it sounds wrong in a way it never did inside your head. Your own voice becomes a quality control check running in real time. Under pressure, this becomes a superpower. While others freeze, the self-talker is quietly organizing the chaos, narrating, sequencing, and working the problem one spoken sentence at a time. They aren't smarter because they talk to themselves, they think more clearly because they do. Think about how you handle tough situations. When you're facing a massive crisis or a stressful problem, do you need to talk it out loud to yourself to find a solution? If yes, comment 88. If you prefer total, dead silence to solve problems, comment 99. Let me know your style down in the comments. Next up is trait number 3, exceptional emotional regulation, an almost unfair ability to control emotions. Here's an experiment you can run on yourself. The next time you're nervous, don't say, "I'm so anxious." Instead, use your own name. Say, "Okay, you've got this. You've handled worse." It sounds strange, but this tiny linguistic shift has been studied for years by Dr. Ethan Kross, a leading psychologist at the University of Michigan, who has built much of his career around the voice inside our heads. What he found is remarkable. When people talk to themselves using their own name, or the word you instead of I, They create psychological distance from their own emotions. They stop drowning in the feeling and start coaching themselves through it. In Cross's neuroimaging research, people who use this kind of distant self-talk before a stressful task felt less anxious, performed better, and recovered faster afterward. The same brain that was about to spiral was talked back down by its own owner. This mental shift instantly dampens the activity in your amygdala, the brain's emotional fear center, and lowers your body's production of cortisol, the stress hormone. In the middle of stress, they don't just react. They challenge the catastrophic thought, they name the fear out loud, they reassure the frightened part of themselves the way a good friend would. While everyone else is swept up in the moment, they're standing slightly outside it, calm enough to choose their next move. That's not weakness talking to itself, that's a mind regulating its neurotransmitters in real time. Which brings us to trait number 4, higher creativity. Listen closely to almost any great inventor, writer, or artist, and you'll often hear the same thing. They talk to themselves while they work, sometimes constantly. And it's not just a quirk, it's the engine of imagination. Creativity at its core is the act of connecting things that don't obviously belong together. And speaking your thoughts out loud lets you do something silent thinking struggles with. You can argue with yourself, play both characters, and ask what if, and then answer in a completely different voice. A conversation with no one becomes a brainstorm with a room full of versions of you. When ideas stay locked inside your head, they tend to circle the same familiar grooves of your neural pathways. But spoken out loud, an idea has to take a physical, acoustic shape. And that shape can be examined, twisted, challenged, and combined with another. Half-formed thoughts collide, strange connections form, and something appears that neither logic alone would ever have reached. That's why so many creative people pace and mutter and narrate the work as they go. They're not losing their minds. They're using them out loud in stereo, exploring possibilities most people never even hear themselves consider. Let's check the creative pulse of our audience. Do you notice that your best, most creative ideas come to you when you are pacing around and talking to yourself out loud? If that's you, comment 88. If your best ideas hit you out of nowhere while you're completely quiet, comment 99. Now let's look at trait number 5, greater focus and mental performance. We tend to think focus is silent, head down, mouth shut. But psychologists have found the exact opposite to be true. In one well-known study, researchers asked people to find a specific object in a cluttered scene. And when participants simply said the name of what they were looking for out loud, they found it faster. The spoken word sharpened their attention, acting like a neural spotlight that pulled the target right out of the noise. It stabilizes the target in your brain's working memory. Athletes have known this for years. Sports psychologists have shown again and again that instructional self-talk short cues like eyes up, follow through, or stay low measurably improves performance. This verbal action optimizes motor performance by boosting dopamine levels in the brain's motor cortex. The voice becomes a coach, steering attention back to what matters the instant the mind starts to drift. And you've probably done it without ever noticing, repeating a phone number until you can write it down, saying keys, wallet, phone on your way out the door, or walking yourself through a recipe step by step. In each case, your own voice is doing something powerful, locking your attention onto a single task and shutting out everything else. People who talk themselves through their work are hard to distract, and it's no accident. They've turned themselves into their own personal coach, and that coach never stops paying attention. This internal alignment builds trait number 6, strong independence of thought, a rare independence of mind. Most people, when they're unsure, reach outward. They ask, they scroll, and they look for someone to tell them what to think. They rely on the digital crowd to validate their reality. But people who talk to themselves have somewhere else to turn first, inward. They've built the habit of running an idea past their own judgment before borrowing anyone else's. When you regularly think out loud, you get used to the sound of your own reasoning. You learn to question it, test it, and trust it when it holds up. You grow comfortable sitting alone with a hard problem instead of needing a crowd to hand you the answer. And over time, that builds something uncommon, a person who can stand on their own conclusions. They don't need the world's permission to feel sure of a decision. They've already had the conversation that matters, the one with themselves. In a world built to tell you what to think every waking second, the ability to hear your own voice over the noise isn't just rare, it's almost rebellious. This independent state reduces social anxiety, regulated by healthy, balanced levels of serotonin in the brain. They are willing to argue with themselves, which often makes them quicker to admit when they're wrong, but they rely far less on outside approval. This is a big one. When you have a major life decision to make, do you trust your own gut and internal logic first? If you run it past yourself out loud before asking anyone else, comment 88. If you immediately need to ask your friends, family, or internet forums for advice, comment 99. And finally, maybe the rarest trait of them all, trait number 7, continuous personal growth, a relentless drive to grow. Notice the thread running through everything we've talked about tonight. The self-aware person examines themselves. The problem solver catches their own mistakes. The emotionally steady person coaches themselves through the hard moments. Put it all together, and you get someone who is, in effect, always in conversation with the person they're trying to become. Stanford University research on the growth mindset shows that individuals who actively engage in self-regulation and self-talk process errors as learning opportunities rather than personal failures. This process stimulates neural pathways that promote long-term behavioral adaptation. People who talk to themselves tend to treat their own life like an ongoing project. After a hard day, they replay it. What could I have done differently? Before a big moment, they rehearse it. When they fail, they don't just feel bad. They ask what the failure has to teach them. Their inner dialogue isn't idle chatter. It's a neurofeedback loop, a quiet, constant process of reflection and adjustment. And this is how real growth actually happens. Not in dramatic leaps, but in thousands of small, private conversations where you hold yourself accountable, forgive yourself, and decide to try again tomorrow. Most people never have those conversations at all. The self-talker has them every single day, and that may be the secret hiding inside this strange little habit. The voice in the empty room isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It might be the sound of a mind that simply refuses to stop improving. So the next time you catch yourself talking to yourself when nobody's around, pause before you feel embarrassed. Because what looks like a strange habit may be something far more powerful. The visible sign of a mind that is constantly learning, adapting, and growing. Higher self-awareness, sharper problem solving, steadier emotions, deeper creativity, stronger focus, independent thinking, and an endless drive to improve. 7 rare traits, all carried by one quiet voice in one empty room. What the world dismisses as odd may turn out to be one of the most useful tools the human mind has ever developed, and you've had it all along. If this video gave you a new way to see yourself, hit that subscribe button right now, because every video here pulls back the curtain on the hidden patterns running your behavior. Before you go, let's seal this mindset. Comment 88 if one of these 7 traits sounds exactly like you, and tell me which one it is. Comment 99 if you want more deep dives into the neuroscience of your daily habits. Talk to yourself, trust your journey, and upgrade your life. I'm out. Peace.